Every year, the Sam Adams Award is presented to an official in the intelligence field who has demonstrated extraordinary levels of ethics. This year, that award went to Edward Snowden. The presentation to the NSA whistleblower was made in Moscow, and Snowden's passport was revoked by officials from the Obama administration. An online petition to have the passport reinstated has already gathered over 44,000 signatures. The Sam Adams Award has been in existence since 2002, and in past years, recognition has been extended to people including Julian Assange in 2010. Samuel Province, who exposed abuses at Abu Ghraib, was the 2006 winner. The Sam Adams Award was presented to Edward Snowden last month by Ray McGovern in Russia. A veteran CIA analyst, he worked at the White House for 27 years. During that time, he frequently delivered intelligence updates to several presidents. McGovern left the federal government and is now a political activist working to bring government abuses to light. Ray McGovern is our guest on the show today, and he has the unique insight of someone who spent years delivering the most sensitive information in the world to the commander-in-chief. McGovern is here to talk to us about whistleblowers, the surveillance state, and his presentation of the Sam Adams Award to Edward Snowden. Welcome back to WHDT World News, Ray.
You're most welcome, Gary.
Now, Ray, before we jump into all the meat and potatoes of this interview, tell us what Snowden's mental capacity is. Did he show any signs of anxiety, any levels of threats being levied at him while he's there in Russia?
Well, let me put it this way, Gary. He gave every indication of being a person who had been under great stress, but had sort of become comfortable with the notion that he did the right thing, that he can be proud of having done the right thing, that he was willing to risk all, literally all, including his life, to do the right thing, and that best of all, his worst fear, expressed in Hong Kong as soon as he surfaced, his worst fear was that he would do all this and nothing would happen.
Well, what's to say?
That fear, by the time we got to Moscow on the 9th of October, had been allayed. And when we asked him, Ed, are you okay now? Thinking that you need not be afraid, that you've had no impact on things, and we got this really broad smile, and he said, yes, it's very, very satisfying to know that these responsible journalists have been able to take the story to where it needs to be, particularly with respect to the violations of the U.S. Constitution that are being done by the National Security Agency.
Now, Ray, let me just jump in real quick. Was there a U.S. official that did call for Snowden's death?
Oh, yeah, sure. You know, it's bizarre. U.S. officials, present and former, are very free calling for Snowden to be done away with. The most recent, and this was interesting, it was just 6 days before we met with Snowden, there was a meeting run by the Washington Post, a meeting on cybersecurity. And there was ex-CIA and ex-NSA Director Michael Hayden, and also the head of the House Intelligence Committee, a congressman from Michigan. Actually, he's a failed FBI agent, having been persuaded for cause to leave the FBI before he could be vested. It's a long story. That's a digression.
Well, you know, let me jump back, though. I met Michael Hayden some years ago at a biometrics conference, and I asked him at the podium, how does one get on the terrorist watch list, and how does one get off? He didn't seem to like that question very much, but I digress as well. Let me jump back. So if there are officials that are calling for his death, how does Snowden treat his inner circle, knowing that his death could be in the next sip of coffee?
Well, sip of polonium, you're thinking, perhaps? I'm thinking about what has been revealed now with respect to Arafat's assassination. Well, just picking up on you're asking that question of Hayden, you are pretty sure now, Gary, that you are on one of those lists, right? The story I was trying to tell is very
well.
brief.
I mean, they are targeting journalists now, so it's not a far stretch of the imagination to believe that.
Sure, it's not only the Fourth Amendment, which is the one in question here, it's the First Amendment, and it's the Fifth Amendment. It's really amazing that this so-called constitutional lawyer that we have as president is worse, and I never thought I'd hear myself saying this, is worse than George W. Bush when it comes to violating crassly, openly, without any apology, the Bill of Rights, for which these people in Virginia, where I sit, these people fought, pledged their lives, their fortunes, their sacred honor at a time when it was just as likely to end up, on the end of a rope than it would be to become founders of a new enterprise. So I'd just like to go back 1 second to what happened 6 days before we saw Snowden. What happened was General Hayden, former General Hayden, the head of this CIA and NSA at one time, he said, I understand that Ed Snowden has been nominated for the Sakharov Prize, a European list. He's on the list for that prize, on the short list. Well, I know what kind of list he should be on. I know what I'd like to see him, what list, And everybody there goes, oh, big joke, okay? Mike Rogers, the head of the House Intelligence Committee, currently pipes in immediately saying, yeah, I can help you with that, Mike. His words. Now, this was not a meeting of the mafia, okay? This was the well-heeled establishment meeting under the auspices of the Washington Post in central Washington. Now, I asked Ed, I said, Ed, are you aware that just 6 days ago, the head of the House Intelligence Committee and General Hayden, former CIA and NSA director, that they said you should be on the kill list? And he winced, and he said, well, Ray, yeah. He said, Ray, I follow these things pretty closely, okay? It was as if to say, my God, what's happened to this country? And that's the real question.
We know that they have initiated drone strikes on American citizens overseas. What's to say that they wouldn't initiate something like this against Edward Snowden?
Well, that's the irony here. I forget if I've already said this, but the supreme irony is that Edward Snowden had no idea that he would end up in Russia. It was the withdrawal of his passport that necessitated that. I was speaking on one program.
Let me jump back, though, because sure. I'm really curious about this, and forgive the reference to Star Wars, but like when Darth Vader killed Obi-Wan Kenobi, he became that much more powerful, and Obi-Wan Kenobi told him that he would become more powerful. Do you believe that would be the case? If something were to happen to Edward Snowden, it would only vindicate all of his revelations? Make him that much more powerful, if you will?
That's an interesting question. It depends on the mass media in this country, the TV and Hollywood, and the fact that most of our fellow Americans are very malnourished on real information. The TV and mass media could easily make that out to be a wonderful strike by a drone or by a SEAL Team 6 against an enemy of the United States people, where in reality, Ed Snowden is a patriot. He saw that Fourth Amendment, and he said, not only is this being trashed, but I'm part of this.
Do you think that there's also, visually, Edward Snowden, a clean-cut looking white kid with a blue blazer, and in contrast, the people that the government sends drone strikes after are wearing traditional Arab garb, and they have beards, and when you put the two pictures side by side, the American people, because they've been led to believe this war on terror angle, would have a greater outcry against an attack on Snowden because he looks more like a white guy?
Well, that's a really good point, Gary. You raised the issue of racism, and I would just say that if those folks in Afghanistan and Pakistan and Iraq look more like I do, it would be much more difficult to justify the kinds of things we've been doing over there. But I think that your question really is a little bit beside the point. He's not going to be droned. He's not going to be a SEAL Team 6 like Osama bin Laden, shot between the head in front of his 9-year-old little daughter. That's not going to happen. And the reason it's not going to happen is twofold. Number one, John Kerry, our Secretary of State, got up during all this and very imperiously, as is his wont, said, Russian authorities, be advised that you must surrender Edward Snowden to. We understand there is no extradition treaty between Russia and the United States, but you must surrender Ed Snowden. Now, I know a little bit about the Russians, how they think. You know, I know a little bit about Putin, and I can see him sitting around the table saying, "Who is this guy? You know? Who is this guy? Tell me what I must do." Okay. In any case, Putin sees the high moral, high legal ground. He was obliged, as any country would be obliged, to offer asylum to a person like Ed Snowden. And after Ed Snowden spent 5 weeks trying to figure out a way through or around, or around Moscow, around the Soviet Union, when his passport was revoked in the Soviet Union, Russia, when his passport was revoked, he had no choice. And Putin not only stood up to the plate, but and was happy to rub it in, but there ain't nothing going to happen to Ed Snowden unless he makes a real bad mistake.
We're up against a break, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but we do have to jump to this break. Sure. And when we come back, I want to continue the conversation about Edward Snowden's passport. We'll be right back. We're talking with Ray McGovern right here on WHDT World News.